to let everyone know that Anthony will be recording this session.
Thank you. So, well, thank you very much indeed for taking such time, busy time, and yet another Zoom calls. I really, really appreciate your time. I'm Anthony Willoughby. I've just had my 70th birthday. I'm finding this in current environment absolutely fascinating, as I see that the good old ideas of structure, stability, status, security, certainty are sort of shown to be delusions of an ill-informed, uneducated mind. And I've sort of spent my lifetime always sort of at the bottom rungs of Maslow, but really enjoying myself. And what I've spent my lifetime trying to do is to really go in search of inspiration. And these are some of the photographs from the different journeys that I've been on that I hope provide some inspiration. I nearly got killed just after that photograph because you see I'm lying right in front of the horse's hooves. But, you know, I believe I wrote a book called In Search of Inspiration decades ago. And I wrote, you know, I believe the greatest challenge and opportunity in life is we have the freedom of choice to shape our own destiny. And since Confucius and Plato are as relevant as when they wrote, surely nothing has changed with human nature. And really the only thing that has changed is the environment we find ourselves in. So as I say, I'm 70, but I'm still fending off boredom with the I will not complain philosophy, still riding camels. But I think for all of us in the last few months, the uncertainty has come in and we've found ourselves lost and confused. And it's for this reason that we bring the nomads from Mongolia and elsewhere to actually lecture to people about how do you have clarity, how do you have the courage, and how do you pivot? Because for thousands and thousands of years, they've known how to look at their land and their territory and adapt to it. And that's really what I'd like to talk about. The whole subject is be bold, pivot, and migrate. Because I don't think they're new. They're something that we've always had with us, but maybe some of us forgotten that throughout history and throughout life, we've had to migrate to new ways of thinking more than physical areas. As I said, I'm 8th generation expatriate. There I was, a happy little boy growing up in Africa. There I am with my father. And when I asked him how I should educate my own children, he said simply, make sure they play sports in which they can get seriously hurt. And I know many of you have lived all over the world, so I'm sure you'll sort of know this gorgeous sort of familiarity of time that has not changed much. Brought up on the banks of the Nile in Khartoum, the very first jet airliner was there. And at the age of 5, 6, 7, and 8, being out there with my father with the elephants. And then all of a sudden finding myself in an English boarding school. And that absolute horror where there was only taught, the only thing I think they taught was arrogance without substance combined with effortless insincerity. And I started to realize, you know, that I had to fold my corners on my bed, whereas to me, it had always been far more important that you didn't have scorpions in your shoes in the morning. And I just could not understand this system that seemed to be basis, no real value to it. And I started to think, what is my escape? And I found one of my escapes was photography. And then some of you may even remember there used to be an amazing show in London called Hair. It was risque. It had naked people in it. First time ever. And I was a photographer. I was at school. And I went to watch it in my last term at school. And there I realized the importance of always pushing the door and seeing what is actually behind it. Because I went to the backstage of Shaftesbury Theatre, and there was the door that was a little bit ajar. And I thought, what is behind that door? And they said, come in. I need some photographs for the playbill of hair. And there is Elaine Page, Peter Straker, and Liz White. And suddenly they opened their arms to me, and it started to give me this sense of hope, the sense that there was an exciting world to be lived. And I was told at school that I was far, far too stupid to go to university. But they asked me, would I like to go on a scholarship to a school in America, to a prep school? And it was an amazing time to land in America just after Woodstock. Kent State was happening, the moratorium for the Vietnam War. Armstrong had just walked on the moon. And it was exciting. There was freedom, but freedom was also quite frightening. Freedom was also a way of being able to get out there and hitchhike. And I did about 10,000 miles of hitchhiking in the States in the spring term. I even hitchhiked by private aircraft. But here I am hitching between Livingston and Gardner in Montana. And what I had there was a sign saying, not hungry. And the reason for that was that a couple of hitchhikers had been picked up and they'd eaten the driver. But what I was really saying, and this is what I've spent my life looking at, is how do we get trusted? How do we trust others? And that is what I adored most about my hitchhiking experiences, and I've done it all over the world, is I believe the most important thing, especially now, is to trust ourselves and to trust others. And it was that gorgeous sense of being in Paris, in Gare du Nord, when they said, le train pour Moscou va partir en 3 minutes. And that idea that the train to Moscow and then on to the Siberian wastelands, and going to Japan on the Trans-Siberian Express, arriving by boat in 1973. And it was that exciting idea that we really only have one ticket in this world, and we might as well enjoy it. When I got to Japan, my very first job was managing the world skipping rope champion called Katsumi Suzuki. But being there in Japan back in the 70s, it gave me time to go to Beijing, to sit in the main street in Beijing in front of Tiananmen Square with our legs crossed doing selfies. There are now 12 lanes of traffic and you wouldn't stand there any time of the day or night. But Mao Zedong was still alive, just a few yards away, and being held prisoner by screaming mobs and realizing this was a different world. But at this time, I also started to think one day I really wanted to stay in Japan. It was a fabulous place to be. It was wonderful. And the next day I wanted to be in Australia. I wanted to go and live in Australia. And I started to wonder, why does one's peace of mind change so much? Why does one day one want to do something and the next day one doesn't? And at that time, I'd been going out with a girl called Sue Little, who was absolutely wonderful. And I thought I would move to Singapore. And if I moved to Singapore, I'm sure people would find me amazingly attractive. But when I got to Singapore in 1977, I rang Sue. I said, come and join me. And she said, not on your life. You've left me. And I suddenly realized that life is strange. For the first time, I feel my ambition is waning. And I only wish I knew why. And I came up with a scale of missing Sue, want to fly to Tokyo, business trips, Nile, photography. And I started trying to link my needs and my wants, and what was it that really drove my sense of peace of mind and purpose. But what I found out was if I went skydiving over Singapore, what happened was my desire to marry Sue dropped. And I started to realize that if what I'd learned is that happiness is derived from a peace of mind and not from fulfilling one's goals. So what I started to see was this link between if you had belonging and recognition and you trusted yourself, And it started to make me think that from these different journeys, I was starting to gain trust in myself and trust in others. And this is on a 21-day camel safari up in northern Kenya, but from Rumaruti via Archer's Post via the Matthews Range. And on this trip, each evening, the Maasai would come into our little encampment. And what I saw there were people who had natural presence. I'm sure many of you have seen it. But this gorgeous natural presence of people's self-confidence, of knowing who they are. And what I saw is they had substance without an iota of arrogance. And I thought back to my own education, which is focused on arrogance without substance. And I became fascinated to learn what was it that we had lost in the West. So I went to the embassy in Tokyo and I met Joseph Nombre. And he was a big man from the highlands of Papua New Guinea and the ambassador to Tokyo. And I said, could you tell me what is it about that you still have in your village that we've lost? And he said, why don't I go there? And he came from the highlands of Papua New Guinea. There are 500 different languages in Papua New Guinea and only 3 million people. It's an amazing place. And that's where I started to learn about handing out feathers and earning your spear. And though you've probably never thought of it before, but I'll talk to you about how you earn it. And there I am in 1982. And what I found out was people there are still running around with feathers, spears, arse-grass, axes. And I said, why do you have so many feathers? They said, well, a big man has many feathers, but a bigger man can hand out his feathers. And leadership is about contributing to your community. It is about playing a role in knowing your duty. So I asked them about the spear. And they said, you have to earn it. You can't buy it. You can't sell it. You can't give it away. You have to accept the responsibility of the spear. You have to earn it. And I'm sure I can ask people in the audience to think of people you know who've earned their spear, leaders you know who hand out feathers and those who don't. And it just seems that this is something instinctive in us. So when I got back to Tokyo, I asked the ambassador, I said, Joseph, what is the single most important thing in your life? And he said, it is my territory. And what he did, he then drew it out on a napkin. And he then started to talk about his duty in his life, his aims and ambitions, and what were his priorities in life, because he knew the threats. And I ask you, what is your territory? Do you know your duty? Do you know your aims and ambitions? Because what I've discovered inside everybody is that ability to actually draw a map of your territory. But in the village, what I learned is that power, the spear, is earned by courage. Wealth is the shield earned by protecting others. And status is the feathers earned from contribution. And I think we have spent so much time in this swamp of civilization. We need to get a better degree. We need to be better than the next person. We need a bigger house. We need a bigger car. And that power, wealth, and status is completely mixed up, and nobody has all three. And I think the worst that I ever was in the swamp of civilization was when I had a gold Rolex. And I remember pulling it back, hoping the father of a girlfriend I was going out with at the time would notice that I was successful. And my toes cringe at that. But I think, how do we escape the swamp? How do we have that freedom to contribute and to know who we are? And that made me think back to my peace of mind chart and other things, and really think about the fact that I believe we're born with these airbags of trust. Trust in ourselves, trust in Mother Nature, and trust in others. And what those airbags do is they give us hope. But as they deflate, instead of working out how we can blow air into them, we jump off and we look at the cardboard boxes of a new job, a new title, a new relationship, a new car, something we own. And I started to realize that actually one's needs and wants controlled by one's belonging and recognition. Because as soon as you get the new car, then it often just deflates like a cardboard box on top. And I started to create my own peace of mind chart. I started to realize I had to trust myself and others to have that belonging and recognition. Otherwise, and if I had that, I had hope. If I trusted myself, trusted others, life was exciting. If I lost that trust in myself, my needs and wants went through the roof. I needed a new relationship. I needed to leave where I was. And I started to work out how to make important decisions, how to create that trust in myself. And that really was taking control of my peace of mind. And there's my stomach on the right, because I realized that actually drinking too much beer was not really any good for my peace of mind. What I wanted to do, and I realized what was great for my peace of mind, was whether it was going near hippopotamuses in Rwanda or the gorillas in Zaire. It put that record button of life on. It gave me that sense of hope and that belief. And it's also going back to hitchhiking, because what I realize is that you've always got to be out there doing something that requires trusting yourself. And what I'd heard, this is back in 1982, so literally 5 years after Mao Zedong had died, China was a very, very, very different place. But I heard it had opened. So I thought I'll go hitchhike to Hong Kong. So I went to see my Indian tailor and I said, could you make me a suit for hitchhiking, please? Because I'm going to be with a girl in an Edwardian costume. So he said, yes. So there I am, hitchhiking out of Turfan. And that glorious sense of adventure, totally unbridled adventure for a sense of fun. But unfortunately, I had too much fun and I fell out of a window and paralyzed myself. Went back to Tokyo, licked my wounds and realized I should be more careful. But then in 1985, I heard Lhasa had opened, the magical place where the Dalai Lama came from. And I thought, wow, let's go to Lhasa. And why not, just for fun of it, hitchhike to Kashgar? So what I did, we went off to Lhasa. It was an amazing place. It was still, the sky burial was going. They couldn't bury people. They couldn't burn them. They couldn't put them in the water. So what they did is they cut up the bodies and the vultures came in and ate the flesh and the bones. It was an amazing sight to see. And it really was the pioneer.
You can take a Ricky Serrani suit anywhere.
And that was really what we did for our Indian tailor, to say thank you so much for making us the suits. So I hope you can see from this about the sense of fun and adventure that I've always been doing my best to have. But I think we also need to look at the seriousness of what we can learn from taking on adventures and journeys. And this is where an I will not complain philosophy evolved. Because I'd heard and I wanted to walk across from the Fly to Sepik rivers, about 180 miles through the center of the Papua New Guinea. The ambassador had drawn a line across a map. And I'd seen that there were villages. So I thought food will not be a problem, but wine might be a problem. So he set off into the jungles with my wife-to-be, Philip and Paul. And Philip just started complaining. He started complaining that we were lost, that I was a lousy leader, which I was, that I hadn't got any food. But he knew that. And he just started complaining. And I saw how a complainer destroys the morale of any group. How can we exist with a complaint? And when you're in the middle of a river like that, you don't want someone saying, you know, the rope is going to break. What you need is people to say, yes, I'm sure we'll get across. And this is also looking at goals. And I think we all need these goals where you have that clarity of what you're trying to do. But this created the evolution of the I Will Not Complain declaration, this mountain. Because I was invited to climb it in Western China. It's 7,500 meter mountain. We're going to do it without porters and without oxygen. And I'd never climbed a mountain before apart from Fuji. So I realized I needed new skills. I needed new attitudes. And I got anybody who wanted to join me to sign the I Will Not Complain declaration. If I get eaten or trodden on by animals, if extra porters are employed to carry wine, I will not complain. And it's really something I've taken with me, because if you don't complain, you can't be beaten, because you will always be able to find a solution. So as you look at your mountains and you think, what is it? What will it be like? Anything we're going to do in life has got to have that wonderful sense of challenge, of adventure, of uncertainty. And that was on the 3 peaks of Africa, Kilimanjaro, Kenya, and Stanley, where everybody signed that I Will Not Complain document of what they were willing to do. And from Mount Kenya there, we then went on to base camp. And I'm sure some of you have been at base camps of mountains or of journeys. That glorious sense of uncertainty, of focus, of fun. The only thing you have to do is to have the courage to move up the mountain to where you want to get to overcome snow blindness, and slowly to move towards your goals. And realize that actually achieving your goals, it's not around getting to the top. It's about the friendships you create. It's about sharing your dreams, sharing your hopes. And for me, this was really a pivoting moment in my life. There I am with my wife, Victoria, having climbed the mountain. And I thought, what do I want to do with my life? What is it? Do I really have the courage to migrate? By that time, we'd built a brand of leather goods that had Louis XIV's Paris. We had the world's most expensive wallet. But I thought, you know, there's got to be something, there's got to be a better way of giving people hope and belief and unlocking their enthusiasm and passion. But 1988 and 89 in Japan was a fascinating time. Japan as #1, Japan that can say no. Sony was alive, Morita was alive, Honda was alive. The Japanese prided themselves that the imperial palace, you can see there, was worth more than all the land in California. And when I said, I've got this idea, the Japanese just said, we don't need you, go home. And what I thought they needed was hope. Because when I fell out of the window and paralyzed myself, I thought I needed to regain my confidence. So I went along to the Hell Training School. And this is Diane Sawyer interviewing me.
But before you can shape up, the instructors say, you must sit up. A long stick used in Zen Buddhist rituals prepares the sloppy plebes to learn self-discipline.
Once you've got in there and you've been through the initiation ceremony and they've played the music and you're feeling a part of it, you then are told that which group you're in, about 8 or 15 people, depending on the time. You're then marched outside and you're put up in line like that. And then you have to look at the person in front of you and scream, "Haizaras! Haizaras! Haizaras!" And that means good morning.
After a few ear-splitting good mornings, each recruit is ready to pick up his 14 badges of shame.
And I thought, how disgusting
wear his inadequacies on his chest.
That you focus on people's inadequacies. And this is what happened to someone who had failed the course completely. The humiliation, the deliberate humiliation.
This is a man who, at the end of those 3 days, had failed the course completely. His future as a manager is probably finished. While the other graduates head home, he is humiliated. When he returns, he will face his boss and his family in shame.
And it made me think, what right do we have to do this to people? To try to enslave them in the rituals? And I thought, wouldn't it be great to unlock trust and willpower in people? And that's what I wrote in 1988. That is what I would focus my life on doing. It meant leaving the comfort of Tokyo to moving into a farmhouse 100 kilometers outside Tokyo. All my children were the very first to go to the local school. They were the first to be born in the local hospital. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say everybody has an opportunity.
And really, everybody out there has got the same ability to enjoy a personal challenge, including you.
Hoi! You stand with your arms.
And it made me realize I made many mistakes with this. I tried to mimic what was being done in America. But the philosophy was there to unlock people's trust. We even made it on the front page of the Wall Street Journal with Gorbachev up on the right. And we then ran a program in 1992 in China. And I went to see the fellow who had invited me and who had organized for me to climb Mustagh Ata. And he said, why don't you open a training center on the Great Wall? And I tell you, the hairs at the back of my neck, I thought, wow, just literally 15 years after being held prisoner by screaming mobs, I could open a center on the Great Wall of China, getting people to think about those barriers. And like most things in life, they've never been logical. You see where China's economy was. It wasn't because of the amount of money. It was because it hadn't been done. It had never been done before, to unlock people's trust in themselves, that trust in others. And there was our little center to bring people from around the world to talk about the barriers and their hope. We even had Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and did some team building with them there. But what I saw is it didn't really matter where the people came from what company. And you might have got trust and willpower, but I realized it wasn't enough. People needed something else. They needed the trust, but they needed the purpose and they needed the clarity. And it made me think that maybe success in business and going forward is not around some amazing new technology. It is just about being more human. It is having a map and saying, this is where I am. This is my priority. This is what I'm going to look after. And what I saw on these maps from Papua New Guinea and elsewhere, they had their village, they had their farming, they had their hunting, they had their fishing areas. And someone from Thomson Reuters said, well, look, I've got a team. They're working with Reuters. They don't know each other. It's not team building they want. They just don't know each other. And I said, well, can I try something, please? He said, of course you can. And I ask you the same question. What is your territory? Because what I've discovered is everybody can actually draw a map of what their territory looks like. And once they've drawn a map of where they see their village, their hunting, and tapping into their instincts and what their brains and what our brains were designed for, they could actually draw a map of what it was that they were trying to do. And that has really been the last 30 years or 20 years of my life, is getting people to think about where they are, what is happening on their territory. So basically, having done 30 years in Asia, I came back to England that everybody needs a map. And I came back to England in 2000, started taking people off to Africa to sit down with the Maasai and draw their maps, and started to talk to people that your cattle, shackles, capital all have the same word derivation. What are your skills? What are your competencies? What are you looking after in your life? What is your purpose? And I started bringing the Maasai to teach businessmen, and they loved it. And I started to say to people, you know, what you need is leadership that is earned based on respect, responsibility, courage, and contribution. And I'd meet people in a party and they say, that's really fascinating what you're talking about. Let's have lunch. Here is my card. So I'd ring these people the next day and I say, can we meet up? And they would go, you know, you are the most boring little man I've ever come across. How could I possibly be interested in your ideas? I'm frightfully successful. I've got a BMW. I've got director on my name card. Things have changed a little bit since then, but not that much. And what I've been focusing on is getting people to think about the realities, to simplify things back to where they are. Because so often the chairman of an organization will say, everything is fantastic. We're heading for paradise. I am so successful. But when you ask the next level of manager, what do they see? They see bullshit bridge, fantasy applications, training island. They see everybody on a different island. Think of that waste of energy, that waste of hope, that lack of leadership. Maps also show we used to hunt here. We need to migrate, but we can't do anything because our leaders spend their entire time hugging each other and won't give us any direction. But once you've got the maps, what you can do is you can start to get people to talk about what's important. And that is Ferrari in Japan talking about the different villages and what they have to protect. So what you can do is you can take hundreds of pages of notes and you can start to put them on priorities. This happens to be the head of Ferrari in Australia. What is it we need to focus on? How do we get people to realize our priorities? We even worked with the Gates Foundation, with Warren Buffett and the team. And what they drew is that they saw that they were lost heading into the territory, this unknown territory. The employees did not feel hope or belief. They didn't have direction. And then the head of the company drew this at Seattle. Let's work with China, where we were at the time, and raise Africa. And they decided, what is a plan that is so big? Think about your greatest ambition. Think about what you might be able to do. And I ask you to think about that in your own lives. And what they said is, we will mobilize resources from China for global polio eradication. Because once you can see on a map what you can do, you can see the future. And this is something that I found on the BBC News about a month ago. Africa declared free of wild polio. So maybe I've played a tiny, tiny little role in helping achieve it because people have seen what it is. And from these maps, people can see where they are. But for myself, it has been a wonderful time over the last 20 years of living a life where I've had the record button of life on. Going back to people I'd met in the 80s, taking photographs that I'd had of them, finding these people and asking them about their worlds, and even being invited to sleep in their huts and talk about life, about values. And for them, it is looking after their cattle, their capital, their skills. Are we protecting ours? Are you protecting yours? Is your organization doing that? The leopards, the lions, and the hyenas are attacking them. But where are the green pastures? Have they shifted for you? You have to rethink. And that sort of sense of simplicity and hope and courage I've done my best to give my children, whether it's from the early ages in the huts, leaping off waterfalls, or taking them to Papua New Guinea. Because I feel for an education, it's got to be something about unlocking courage. We need it. As my father said, a little danger keeps me up to scratch. We have to have that. And when my boys get to 16, I sent them off to live with the Maasai for a week, both of them at different times. Because I think we need our rites of passage. It's not danger. It's giving them a sense that they've got to go in search of their dreams, a search of their hope. It's what we need in life, especially now. It's also given me the opportunity to work with other people, such as Aboriginals in Australia. And what this lady talked about, if you see on the right-hand side, she's only got one eye open because she's part of mainstream society. Her parents were taken away from their community by the whites there who wanted to educate them. So she was brought up with an education, but with only one eye open. And therefore what she wanted to do was to come home knowing who oneself is, knowing who you are, being culturally aware, going through that land of tribal law, of identity, of repatriation, of heritage, coming home to country. And I think that's what we all want to do, to have that sense of who we are, have that sense of identity and respect. And more recently, when I was 65, I bought a ticket to Mongolia, and I thought, wow, what a fantastic place to go and explore. What would be there? We set up a company to work with the eagle hunters, and life has really not changed. But it's around the skills that are useful. It is around how you contribute. And what I saw, whether I was in East Africa or in Mongolia, respect, responsibility, courage, wisdom, they're all valued. And that sense of absolute clarity, of being able to move through the mountains with the nomadic herds. We spent 4 days in -30 riding with 500 head of cattle through the mountains. This glorious sense of knowing where they were going, why they were going there, and how they got there. And that's why we've been taking people to Mongolia or East Africa to learn about how you create a community. What are the values that you need to have a community where everybody is belonging, recognized, and knows how they contribute? Because I think we've forgotten that we have to adjust to the seasons, to the winter, the spring, the summer, the fall. We change our environment. The landscape changes, the needs of the animals change. We have to fatten them up depending on what the opportunities are, but always migrating. And I think today we all have to migrate in our minds. It is not the same as it was. What are those green pastures that we're going for? And whether I'm doing that in Mongolia or elsewhere, talking to Mongolians about the migration, how do they see themselves? And it just seems deeply rooted in everybody. There is an ability to see a map. There's ability to see that because of COVID, a chasm has come. What is it we all have to focus on? And for them, it was around how can we build the bridge to the new world? Because I think for all of us with COVID, how do we see ourselves? How do we see our priorities? Have they changed? Do we really know why we're doing what we're doing? Does everybody in the organization have the same map? Because even vast organizations like a huge glass company in Japan, they saw themselves heading towards the mountains. And all of a sudden, the ground fell away from them. They have to change. They have to adapt. They have to adjust. And what I believe they have to do is to move from fear to hope. How do you do that? And how do you make sure everybody's migrating from there? What are the enablers? How are you going to change? How do you move? What is your map going to look like? And how do you have a plan? And so what we've started to do, we started to have Zoom calls with Emmanuel Mankura from his village in Kenya, talking about leadership, talking about identity, looking at people's maps, letting him talk about their maps. Because once you've seen someone's map, you have the clarity, you've never unseen it. You know why you're doing what you're doing. Refreshing, different. It's not around the arrogance of new technology. It is about being human, reminding oneself of where we are. How are we going to move? What are the plans? What do things look like? Because once you have a map, you have a point of reference, you have a context to talk about. We're even now taking this to schools, your journey in search of inspiration. We're asking children from the age of 11, what is your quest in life? What is your purpose in life goals? What is your philosophy? Let us see that we all need these. We need these values, and they've always been with us. And some of the teachers are, this is Nelson Mandela's prison guard, Christo Brand, talking about when you make decisions that are against your government because you know it's decency for human beings. So these are the templates that we use. We get people to map, whether it's individually or for the company. Where are you now? Where are you trying to get to? Do you know the rivers and the bridges that you're going to have to cross? On the left, are you all in different places? Or are you all sitting round that same center, the same desk? Do you have a map of where you want to be? Do you have the courage to cross the rivers? Are you thinking about which river, which bridge you're going to build and how you're actually going to do that? Because I think all of us today, whatever our age, wherever we are, we can't rely on our governments. We can't believe a word they say. We just have to know where we are. We have to know our journey. Where is it we want to go there? Why? How are we going to work with people? What do we have to trust in ourselves? How can we trust ourselves? As we step out into that uncertainty tomorrow, what is that camel train going to be? Have you got that route? Are you bold? Are you going to pivot? Are you going to migrate? And do you know really what you're hunting? Because I think really we all need that sense of inspiration of what are we actually looking for? What is our quest? What is your quest? Mine has been to try to understand in my life what I need to learn about myself, human nature, and the laws of Mother Nature, if I want to have a freedom of choice. And I think all of us today, we need a sense of clarity, of quest, that lovely sense of fun and enjoyment. So thank you all very, very much for watching. And I do hope we can keep in contact and you can hear more about what you're all doing. But thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony. It was really a pleasure to listen to your presentation. And I'd like to open it up to everyone. I'm going to remove the forced mute so that people can unmute themselves. Okay. So please, would you like to raise your hands if you have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
go
am
ahead.
I interrupting?
No,
I just
I do.
wanted to-
I have a questions. If you when you have time, when is my turn come?
One moment, Kimberly is talking and you can go next. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Very well.
Thank you. Anthony, you've lived my dream life, I think. And I can imagine of all the travels you've had, how hard it is to stay home right now. I'm feeling the very same way. One question, how did you finance all of your travels or all of your initiatives? Over the years, hitchhiking was for free, I suppose, but there must have been other ways. You said you started a company to help here or there.
I mean, basically, most of my trips were pretty inexpensive. I mean, the most expensive one was climbing Mustagh Ata. And we actually had a Japanese company sponsor us. But I mean, all those photographs are punctuated by a massive amount of boredom. So, I mean, I had a normal job, you know, working for a small company I set up, selling wallets and briefcases and sales promotion and managing the world skipping rope champion. But what I realized that even a week trip to China, like the hitchhiking trips, I mean, it was simply that glorious sense of uncertainty, of fun, of being in a bar, drinking a few beers, going, let's go to China. Yeah, let's go. Where do we go? Yes, let's talk to the Indian tailor. Yes, he'll give us a suit. Yes, we'll go together. You know, and I just think we need this sense of uncertainty.
I also think that freshness, that openness attracts people to you as well, attracts opportunities to you.
I think it does. I really, really do. And I think one's just got to be positive and realize that, you know, we want enthusiasm. You know, the Cock Up Club, to celebrate the wisdom of life experience. I mean, dedicated to Churchill's definition of success, which is stumbling from one disaster to another while maintaining one's enthusiasm. I mean, every one of those photographs, I could tell you what went wrong in that photograph. Something has always gone wrong. But that's part of it. That's why you don't complain.
Part of the challenge is solving those problems as well.
It is. Yeah. And I mean, you know, I had a normal job. I'd go off and do things and, you know, come back and talk about them.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It is inspiring.
Thank you.
Mr. Anthony.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Nadia. My name is Fahad, and actually, I'm very impressed the way you have described and showed things for us. And during your going to Africa, to Mongolia, to China, these people you have met, what do they have in common?
Indigenous people. كيف حالك؟ بتكلم عربي. أنت بتكلم
Yes,
عربي؟
I do. أنا بتكلم عربي، تفضل.
تفضل، شكرا. أنا بتكلم عربي، ما بتكلم مش كتير. نمشي 3 سنين نهارتوم السودان. كويس أوي.
I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed.
Now, I think basically most indigenous people, and I hope you can tell me, still have as their core respect, responsibility, and courage. And the contribution, and that is what it is. And you earn the respect from contributing to your community. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that is what I find just so refreshing. I mean, there's a glorious expression with Mongolian nomads, and that is the more you have, the less you are.
And the less you do.
Yeah, the less you are, the more you get yourself complicated, the more you embed, the more you own, the more complicated your life becomes, and the less you are. And I think
these are simple people. These are simple people, very simple. They are primitive.
Well, I don't think the word is primitive. I think it's where we all came from. And I think we have lost it. It is a naturalness. They are real. We have lost it. We are so caught up because power, wealth, and status have been split. We always are trying to get the third one. And this is how we can be enslaved by civilization. Because if you can split the three of them, then you have people under control, like my father in the army in India, in England. Basically, he had a tiny bit of status, virtually no power, and zero wealth. Whereas someone who was in commerce had wealth, they had a little bit of power and no status. Civilization exists by removing people's dignity and stratifying them. And indigenous people, I believe, still have that set of values that we can learn from. There are many other things we shouldn't emulate, but on the whole, that's what I like about it.
Anthony, someone was requesting, could you put the last slide with your email, because they said it was too quick for them to...
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love, please, to be in contact. Please, please, please. This is just the beginning. This COVID opportunity from people is really, really to work together to create a movement. Please, Anthony at nomadicschoolofbusiness.com. We're going to be organizing many, many more events, global mapping days and other things. So please, please, please be in contact if you'd like to be.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you.
Not at all. My pleasure to be with you and to be a part of it. Are there any other?
Diego,
Yeah.
Diego, would you like to say something? I think you raised your hand.
Okay, yes. Hi, Nadia. Thanks, Anthony. Very inspiring. I have 3 questions. I'll try to be quick. First, I've been also, I like to draw, you know, like look at my map and stuff.
Yeah.
And stuff like this and numbers, you know, but it's like bits and pieces and perhaps would like, so first question, would like to understand if there is any methodology, because my drawing is pretty static rather than moving and building the bridges. So I like to know if there is any methodology. My second question, how do you build trust? You know, when you move, you're a foreigner, and there is always kind of inherent mistrust with the locals. So how do I had built trust in the past and all, but if there is any specific about building trust when you're new into a community. And I forgot about my third question, so I leave it like that.
Okay. I think as far as the mapping goes, I just basically ask people to think about their territory and how they see it. But there's now actually a massive amount of research about how this actually taps into the brain. There's a lot of brain science into what you're drawing when you draw something, what it does to the brain and how you can move it, the different colors, etc. So I'd love to talk to you more about that and show you more of the mapping session. I don't know, as far as building trust, I've just always assumed everybody's going to be nice to me. I mean, I just find it inconceivable that someone's not going to be nice. I mean, I've been ripped off. I've made many huge mistakes financially, but on the whole, wandering into a village in Africa or anything like that, or hitchhiking down Zaire from Arua in Uganda down there, I've never really had a problem. You know, it's just always, hello, I'm here. You know, it's a bit like when I ring someone up on the phone, you know, this is your lucky day. I'm going to brighten up your day. So it's probably not the most sensible one, but I mean, that's why with my children, when they went to a party in Canada, in Calgary, I said, you can fly to Toronto. You've got to hitchhike the rest of the way. I've hitchhiked with my children all over Europe, even in my 50s. Because they have to learn it. And they have to learn that you have to put your thumb out in life, especially now. And communicate with people in a language with maps and images that they can understand and identify with.
Thanks, Anthony.
I'm not sure whether I've answered the question, but please, yes.
Yeah, definitely. It's not that easy, but I got the 2.
Yeah. But for 70 years, I mean, I don't think I've ever really been let down. I mean, I've had people that have come chasing me and a truck's arrived at the right time and I've jumped on it and got away from people. But, you know, very, 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 very seldom. And that was me being an idiot taking photographs. Linda, sorry, you were going to say. Yeah, question? I think, Linda, you're muted.
I think it's important to know for yourself that you need to do the first step.
Yeah.
If you don't do the first step, you don't do anything.
Yeah. But then, you know, again, it's when you get pushed into it. I mean, so for me, it was going to America. You know, I was in this most dreary English system of arrogance without substance, effortless insincerity. You know, that's all they taught at school. And the only thing they added to that was enthusiasm was a certifiable mental disorder. And then, you know, I get to America and all of a sudden, freedom, let's go on strike, the Kent state, you know, life was alive. And you've got to see it. It's not something naturally that comes to you. I think you have to go and search for it.
Yeah, that's
realize
true.
there's a lot of people who are around there who are alive, but around, you know, the systems we find ourselves in, it's difficult to find it.
It's funny, I feel very drawn to Asia, and I'm also have become a photographer in 2004. So I was thinking of a name for Instagram, and it was not so easy. And I have the name Asian Quest.
Yep.
So now you speak of quest. Well, I think life is a quest, you know.
I think it is, and I think it's very important to have one, and that's why we're trying to get children to think about what their quest is, because you know, let's think about what, you know, what that looks like. We need it. It's like food, because in the past we would have known we earned it from contributing to our community, from earning the feathers, from handing out the spears. We would have earned our quest, but now we don't have it. I think we need it.
I have been teaching ethics for 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm a retired teacher as well. And, you know, when you said you were teaching with your children like 11 years old, that was the age I was working with, age 11 years till 15. And I found it so, it was like I was one of them, you know?
Yeah.
It was like sitting together and being on the road, even in the classroom, and enthusiasm. And well, they gave to me a lot as well. So I'm very thankful for this. It was for me like an opener, like this is like unspoiled.
And that's what maps, and that's what's been killed. That's what civilization does. It removes it from us. It's deliberate. It's systematic and deliberate, in my opinion.
Yeah, but luckily I had no program, so I did just what I did, what I liked, and it was a lot about talking, but also creativity and meeting people and inviting people and asking questions and all about being open. You know, it was like a quest. For me as well, everything was adventure.
Yes, and it still is for me. I'm 70, but my God, the adventure is just beginning, because we can have a conversation like this that we wouldn't have had before. We can talk about our maps. We can talk about the bridges we're going to cross. We can talk about this in a way that we couldn't have done before, because we all need to work out where that bridge is. So.
Sneh has her hand raised. Would you like to ask a question, Sneh?
Yeah, thanks, Nadia. Now, thanks, Anthony, for sharing with us your stories and your approach to life. I've traveled for many years as well, and I can appreciate and absolutely relate to this idea of being thrown out there and having to trust yourself. You know, I think the best thing I did was my first trip around the world. I took a year off school and just went backpacking around the world, and to do this alone as an Indian woman from an Indian family was quite something. And it was one of those, it was actually a time where, and I'm sure most of your travels were in this period as well, where there was no internet, you know, there's no mobile phones, no Facebook. And if you had to make an international call, you had to go into one of these booths and pay for an international call. But I think, you know, and that was really when you were forced to trust yourself, because there was no one else around you at the time. But these days, you know, with mobile phones and iPads and everyone bringing those things around, they're inseparable from their phone. With Facebook and Instagram, everything is so connected, and you're never really alone. And even the Maasai, you showed us Maasai coming on Zoom, conferences, you're never really alone. So I don't know, you know, I thought to myself as well when I was doing my trip, when I have children, I would just give them a one-way ticket, around the world ticket, and send them off and have that experience, because it was the best best thing I've ever done in my life. But now I think you can't, it's impossible to replicate it because of the way the world is.
Well, that I totally agree with you. And I think it's very, very difficult to have the trust in yourself, because you've always got a phone that you can ring someone up. And I think that's what we've sort of lost. And how do you move from the number of Facebook likes to who are liking myself? And I think that's a challenge that we all face, today. And that's how we've got to adapt. And I think that's why we've got to have bold plans, go and climb mountains, go and hitchhike, go and do something that really, really gets it's real. I mean, go skydiving. I mean, for me, it is just the most wonderful way of formatting your mind. Go and do an accelerated free fall course. When you've done some jumping, you are with people and you've all done it together. And that's something that can't be taken away from you. It's great. So no, I totally agree. It's very, very difficult. That is the challenge of today, of having an identity. Every city looks the same, whether you're in Tokyo, Hong Kong, or Kathmandu. I mean, they basically look the same. Starbucks on each corner. I mean,
It's sad.
So yeah, but I still think life can be very exciting. This, I think, is incredibly exciting. That's why I think this whole opportunity from COVID is extraordinarily exciting, because we are robbed of all the normal points of reference. We have to adapt, and we've got a choice. We can either complain or we can get on and do something.
I suppose it's a question of finding things and discovering things.
Correct, because we've all been so busy that it hasn't had to happen. And that's why I think with executives, they've all been so busy going from one meeting to another and polishing their BMWs. Never actually had to sort of think about what their priorities are or why they're doing it. And being an idiot and a bully got them to where they are, but they can't really bully people on Skype in quite the same way as they used to be able to. And I think the whole shift of how you speak to people and how you get them to believe in what you actually as being a decent human being is. And let's hope that's going to start coming through.
But being alone with your own thoughts can be very disturbing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now they're being forced to turn inwards and be insightful, and that can be very confronting and frightening. It's easier just to kind of be busy with external things. But it can be a really good learning experience.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this is why I find this exciting, because all of the normal structure, stability, status, security, and all the rest are basically now proven to be delusions. They never were there. They don't exist for nomads. They don't exist because they've always had to adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Anthony, I sort of remembered the other question. Yeah, now that you said nomads, so pretty much the model that we had been discussing is about a nomadic view of life and hunting and moving. Which is great, and in my case, I actually I'm used to, because I'm a military boy, so I moved around and easy to adapt and all. But as you get old and especially you have a family and the kids and all, you need to give them a certain security, stability, and then it comes, which is great to have a home and a certain routine. And how are your thoughts around that?
Now, please understand, when I say moving around, I don't mean you physically jump around and do all the rest. What I'm saying more around nomads is they have the clarity of why they're doing something. So they understand why. They understand what their purpose is, and they understand how they can adapt to situations. And I think that's what I'm talking about, the clarity, the purpose, the adaptability. I'm not saying you keep having to move from one place to another, because I always remember someone telling me, if you've got a problem, so you're going to leave the country you're in and go to another country to get away from your problem. That problem normally meets you as you get off the plane when you land. It's not as if moving to another place. I think it is framing your mind, being happier, trusting yourself more, looking at your territory, looking at your peace of mind. And I'm going to start putting my peace of mind so people can try it out. I'd love people to test out their peace of mind, looking at the link between needs and wants, trusting yourself and others, and belonging and recognition, and then seeing how you can control it. Because I've found a pretty reasonable way of controlling my peace of mind by how I speak and what I do.
A question here, please.
Yeah.
So we said that we have to trust ourselves and also trust other people. I think it's easy to trust the people who are trusted. I mean, who are look good and who are look to be trusted. But the point is how to trust people. We don't know them. We just meet them for the first time, but they don't look really to be trusted. I mean, the way they act is not trusted or not not a well behavior. So how to deal with these people? Continue to trust them or avoid them, just keep away?
I think normally, I mean, I remember reading it once, if ever your car breaks down in a really bad part of Africa, go and find the biggest, largest person and say, excuse me, sir, could you help me? My car has broken down. And I did that once and it was wonderful. He said, hey, how can I help you? I think there are two things about trust. I mean, you can trust me with what I'm saying. I'll turn up and I'll buy you a beer. But you wouldn't want to trust me with your personal finances if it's a disaster I've done with my own. You wouldn't want to trust me with a scalpel to sort of cut, cut your kidneys out or something like that. So I think there's levels of what trust is. But I think normally if you go up to someone and say, hey, I like you, can I sit down and let's have a beer? Can I buy you a beer? I think you just have a conversation, and I think that's good for the soul, good for your heart.
That's true. Yes, that's correct. Yes.
And I think it's the little things that sort of reestablish your heart, because you start seeing people actually want to be nice to you.
Yes, and I think when we begin to be nice with the people, usually people will also give it back. Will also be nice to us, even if they are not nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'd say. I have literally done over 40,000 miles of hitchhiking in my lifetime, and I have never, ever had a single problem.
Thanks a lot.
So that's it, yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel, would you like to ask a question? Your hand is raised.
Yes, that's me. I thought most people they have their settled life, they have families and the jobs, they're more or less happy with their lives. But the question is the so-called peace of mind. How do you know if you have the peace of mind?
Well, what I look at is peace of mind normally comes from my sense of sort of feeling of belonging and recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling I'm doing something that I value and I'm being valued for. And that is how I find I can control my things. So if I want to go and buy a new car, or I sort of feel some days I want to find out about a new camera lens.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of find out that you only really start looking for camera lenses when you're feeling quite happy, because you're sort of feeling relaxed and it's something that's a hobby that you want to do. So what I find fascinating, I'd fill in this chart on a regular basis, but I find it fascinating linking when I felt happy, when I felt peace of mind, when I felt sort of financial ambition or uncertainty, or how bad my hangover was.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a number of hours sleep. I found all of those things sort of affected my peace of mind. So it's just, it's just looking at what works, and that's what worked for me. And I'd be delighted, as I say, to if people would like to test it out, I'd be delighted to show you how it's worked for me.
But do you know, is it some kind of limit, or is it just you purchase, you try to move forward and find maybe a deeper peace of mind, or it's just now it's a good balance? And
You know, I'm not spiritual. I just think it's sensible. I mean, I've never really read many books. I just enjoy sitting down with people and having beers with them and talking to them about life. And I find that that's great.
Mhm.
I don't think it's around hidden meaning. I don't think it's around any, you know, it's just around having a natural life, I think.
Mhm. So just like letting it go and letting it flow and see how it feels.
Yeah, flowing, just when you feel happy, and then just look at your peace of mind and see on the list. And if people would like to try out the chart, I'd be delighted, please.
Super interesting, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vicky, yeah, go ahead, Vicky. Is that Vicky?
Hi, hey. So thank you so much for all your stories, and it's really absolutely nice to hear about that. My question is, okay, it's very good to hear about that when you're a man, but if you are a woman and you hitchhike, it's like a completely different story. So how can you like say that someone can trust everyone when they are a woman and they are hitchhike like in Africa or in India and all of those things? Like, I would love to believe in it, but as a woman, it's a totally different story.
Well, my wife has been hitchhiking in Africa with me quite a lot. She's hitchhiked across China by herself with no problems at all. Look, for a woman, I would not recommend my daughter goes hitchhiking. Definitely not. But again, hitchhiking is just it's just a state of mind, you know, knowing you can get around. I mean, you know, go skydiving if that sort of affects the peace of mind. So I was hitchhiking. Yes, it's from a male perspective. And a lot of what I talk about, the tribal communities, it's from a male perspective. You know, FGM in Kenya and other places, that is wrong, but they're trying to break those taboos. So I'm simply observing what I think we can learn from it. And yes, there are many things that are wrong as far as what women should be allowed to do, what they can do. But then I think, you know, you don't go hitchhiking. You know, you just wouldn't do it.
No, that's what is very frustrating, because I would love to do that kind of thing. Like, I love hiking, for example. I've got a friend who goes hiking. It's like the most amazing places. He goes to Georgia, he's go to Jordan, he's go to Africa. Like, but some places I can't go because I'm a woman, and I know that if I go, there will be some problem. Like, especially if I go by myself because I don't have a boyfriend. So it's a really, very frustrating for me to be like a woman and hear all of the stories, because I would love to do it, but I just cannot, because you know, this is who I am.
Yep. But you know, a lot of people have hitchhiked, but I'm obviously not going to recommend it. But now I just love that sense that people are going to be nice to you.
That's already a good thing.
Yeah.
To hear that, you know, that people can be nice to you and that people are positive. If you believe in them, to believe in you, that's already a great thing. That's already a great thing, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, the sense of being great. Well,
thank you. Yeah. And as I say, if people would be interested in doing some mapping with me, testing it out at another point and seeing where people's journeys are and how you can use the maps to look at where you want to get to, please let me know. Maybe Nadia, we can work on that together.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
I'd be very interested in that. It's sort of come to the conversation late, but I think that would be fantastic.
Okay. That would be really good, yeah, because I believe one day everybody will have a map and you'll actually show people maps, even on relationships or other things. Where are we trying to get to? Are we on the same map together? And yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Is there a connection,
Scott? Yeah.
between the walkabouts of the Aboriginals and the dot painting and how the mind works and what you do?
I would think so. I have spoken a little bit to Aboriginals, not enough, but yes, it is. I mean, it is definitely. I've got all sorts of maps from Kenya talking about how they migrate their animals and how they see it. But yes, but I don't know that the relationship.
Yeah, but I feel it's about the same thing.
Yeah, it's all natural. It's just the natural how people see things. And say one thing I did with my children when they're about 10 and 11, we stopped off at a school and we got the children to do some maps of how they saw their territory. And the African children all drew what they were responsible for, their animals, etc. And my children all drew what they owned, their Game Boys and other things. And it was very different between ownership and responsibility as being priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something about this hitchhiking.
Yeah.
I've been traveling about 10 times in Ireland, and
Yeah.
I love the country, and I feel very comfortable.
Yeah.
So I had a car, a rented one, always, and I used to stop for people on the road, and I picked them up. So it was not me hitchhiking, but I saw people, and I was thinking, hey, it would be nice to have a conversation, to have fun, maybe to learn, especially.
Yeah.
So I had very good experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. You try hitchhiking yourself. I think you'd love it in a place like Ireland. I think it would be fantastic.
Yeah, there's this man with this fridge, that story. Yeah, he was on the road. But you know, could it be a difference that when you stop for people that your intuition is more in action, and when you hitchhike yourself, you are a little bit more in adventure.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience. Yeah. My last hitch was a year ago in Kenya from up the Mombasa Road. But yeah, no problems. Sorry.
But as a woman, I never felt afraid to stop for people, you know.
No.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
But maybe how can I explain that? Maybe I won't do it in India. Sorry. Huh?
No, I wouldn't have thought so, but there are certain places anyway. Yeah. But any other, Scott, you seem to want to say something.
Yeah, hi Anthony. I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time. It's been really interesting. And like you said, like the beginning for me as well, it's like this period of time that we're in at the moment, it's actually been really helpful for me to do a lot of like personal work that I perhaps wouldn't have done otherwise. So it's been really interesting. But in terms of a question, I've always been like interested in Japan, and I went there in 2016 and traveled around. I just was wondering if there was anywhere in particular that you would mention, that you would recommend, that's kind of like an amazing place to go it's kind of like outside of Tokyo, I suppose.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, we can sit and people send me an email and I'll tell you where to go. But oh God, the Japan Alps are out of this world. They're like the Pyrenees. They're about 3,000 meters. They're about 20 mountains above 3,000 meters, and you just walk along the ridges, staying in the huts. Absolutely out of this world.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Thank you.
Oh God, that's fabulous. And I mean, I can tell you all sorts of other places. It's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place. You will never really connect to what on earth is going on or understand it. It's the only country on earth where every generalization is true. And I mean, you saw the Hell Training School. I mean, that was the most depressing place I have ever been to. And you just saw this way of creating fear, and you know, an entire organization run on fear and humiliation, and you realize there's something morally wrong with success. And I think it really made me question many, many, many things, seeing how they manipulated people.
Yeah, it's a terrible terrible thing. But yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll definitely send you an email later at some point.
I would love to chat on that. Yeah.
Hey Anthony, one last question from me. When just came to my mind when you talk about mapping your territory or expanding also your territory. I think also it's not necessarily a physical place. It's more being clear about your purpose, your mission also. And how it all ties up with your people around and society. Would that be the case?
It would be, and people say you should give me a template on how I should draw my map, which I do, but the best one is just really have a blank sheet of paper and think about what your territory is, and you just start drawing. And it's extraordinary where you see the different areas, the relationships, and obviously it's totally a state of mind. You know, all those maps drawn by the companies, rivers, mountains, deserts, swamps, it's still their emotional perceptions. But when people have done a map like that, what they're actually drawing is what is driving their emotional behaviors, because you can't draw detail and you can't draw what's not important. But when you've actually seen someone's map that they've drawn, you're never going to forget it. So when you see someone, you can then help them cross the rivers. About 5 months ago in May, I ran a session, International Territory Mapping Day. We had 190 people on 5 continents. Everybody had drawn their map, and then they started explaining to each other in small groups. So you had someone in Mongolia with someone in New Zealand and someone in France, all talking about the rivers in their life that they were trying to cross, because then you've got the commonality of conversation.
Thanks so much, Anthony.
Not at all. Thank you. So
I have one last question. Okay, so you seem like very positive in everything you do, which is absolutely awesome. Like, obviously you will have negative voices in your head, like everyone. How will you kind of like overpower those negative voices in your head? Like, how would you have the strength to say, hey, today I'm drawing my map, today I'm pushing through, today I'm like taking that hike and I'm trusting those people?
Yeah, I mean, I am fairly positive. I mean, I'm very lucky with that, and I'm positive most of the time. I think it's also trying to now work out. I mean, the worst it's ever been for me was when I came back to England and I actually inherited some money. But I mean, I actually thought I was talking to people, and and they would just go, "You are the most boring little man I've ever come across. How could I possibly be interested in your ideas?" And you realize that you were speaking the same language and you had no real connection. And that's why that's why I set up the Cock Up Club, because I had a card printed. Anybody I met, what do you do? I'm chairman of the Cock Up Club, which is either when's the next lunch or I don't do cock ups. So you could then start talking to people. But I've now got to a point, there are 3 things that really sustain my peace of mind. One is having interesting conversations, which we're having here, which is obviously fabulous. The other one is fending off boredom, which is going off on different trips, but this is also fending off boredom. And the other thing is taking photographs. And I'm taking lots of photographs of my grandchildren now and taking life. So it's not maybe the camel safaris, but I mean, last year I was in Kenya 5 times. I joined the nomads in Mongolia on a migration. So, I mean, I'm still doing that when I can. But I think it's adapting to what it is. And if you're fending off boredom, then you're going to be happy. And I mean, failure, my God, I've failed at so many things. You wouldn't believe it. But it's sort of maintaining.
But that's good that even though you failed, you still have this like power to bounce back and to say, hey, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, 1988, I wrote, I will set up an organization that will unlock trust and willpower. It's taken 30-something years, 33 years, before all of a sudden people go, trust and willpower. Trust is really important. You know that. We've just read a university from Harvard. It says trust is important. Wow, that's amazing. Trust has been important for indigenous people for thousands of years. Without trust, no indigenous community exists. They know it. Why don't we?
Totally.
So anyway, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question, Anthony?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So thanks a lot also for the so inspiring talk and presentation. I've been also myself traveling a lot, and now I know a little bit more why. My 2 questions. The first one. So yes, very interesting would be an event on how to use the maps. And but if I understand, the map is to find a way to reach your goal.
Not really, no. I mean, you can do that more about it. It's really just trying to work out how you see your world at the moment.
Is it about finding your quest?
It is in a way finding your quest. Everybody's map is going to be completely and utterly different. So when we're working with a company, it's obviously where's your company going and what you're doing. But with an individual, what I normally do is I show different maps from people in Africa that have drawn them, different villages, talking about their life and their responsibilities, and then use that as a base for people to think about their own lives. And I've got lots of interviews with indigenous people in Kenya, admittedly doing it. I mean, I'm not an anthropologist. I say I left school at 18. I know nothing about it. It's just sitting down with people saying, so what's important? How do you see things? And from that, getting them to start talking. And that's how I find the map creates conversation. So everybody's map is going to be different. Everybody's priority is going to be different. It's simply to have a conversation.
Okay. And did your map change over the years? I mean,
oh God, yeah. My map is always evolving and changing.
Hmm.
And for me, I've got a map very clearly of my business and how I see migrating. I mean, there's this fabulous opportunity now for e-learning. It's going to be worth $375 billion in 10 years' time, because everything has got to change in how people learn and how they interact. And that's got to be the future of how it's going to be. So the maps are always changing. Nobody knows what this territory looks like at the moment. It's completely unexplored. I mean, it's going to be something like 800 million jobs are going to go. So that's what McKinsey say, because of automation. Everything is in theory going to change. So how does one adapt and adjust and remain with your heart and your soul that you're going to be interested in life and not depressed?
Mm-hmm.
So no, I'd love to show you more of the maps if you're interested, and the different ways that we do it with different individuals, how they've used it in businesses, how companies have used it. All of those examples I've got masses and masses of, but today was really just to talk about what I think's important.
Yeah, and just a second quick question. You have been traveling so much. Was it ever a conflict to conciliate freedom with the love? So family and traveling, or?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, basically, I was living in Japan, and I turn up in Tibet, and there I meet this English woman, and she says, "So, what school did you go to?" So when I told her, she said, "Oh, both my brothers and my father were in the same house as you." So she was hitchhiking one way and I was hitchhiking the other. And then we basically went and climbed the 5,000 meter peaks of Africa. We walked across Papua New Guinea together, and we climbed the 7,000 meter mountain together. So very, very similar on those beliefs. And she's absolutely delighted for the children to be sent off up mountains, or to go hitchhiking or do this. So we've always had those adventures together. Yeah. So that's always really where it's been. So I've been very, very, very lucky with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, even on our honeymoon, as part of our training for Mustagh Ata, we went and climbed the Matterhorn. We didn't get to the top, but we got pretty high up it.
Yeah.
Can I take over, please?
Please.
This is Daniela from Vienna. And I want to thank you for sharing your experiences, and thank you everyone for the company, and thank you, Nadia, for organizing. My thought is one that I really can't find a way to go further with it, because I've done a lot of Africa, and actually what I understand from your presentations is that you practically went to the very meaningful, simple ideas of life. So you got rid of that fancy boarding school and you start discovering life. I had the same opportunity, although not in this way, not in the hijacking way. I went to Africa in a very high level UN diplomatic stuff.
Yep.
But I could leave this apart and try to find out as much as possible from indigenous and simple people in the countryside. And I was amazed how we European lost the very meaningful of life.
Yeah.
My question is, how can we bring people back to this? Because people went into some way that their interest is going more and more into other things, material things, owing and comparing to others, like you said, the bigger car, the bigger house, the bigger holiday, the bigger everything.
Yep.
How can we make them in a significant percentage that it will go on the turning point and people, so that people will go back to the meaningful values of life, simple ones. This is
I mean, I think that's, that has been my quest for many, many years, and people have always thought I'm absolutely mad in what I've been talking about, but gradually it's becoming almost sensible. So I don't think one can worry too much about the fact that one can't convert people, but I think it's just continually talking and having conversations that maybe there is a different way to do things. And gradually more people will start to realize. And I think this is what COVID has done. It's given people time to rethink. And I think one or two people, but they, if we can give them a map, then maybe that will help them more. And if you've got each other's maps, then you can communicate better.
Oh, it would be so nice if this map would solve all things.
Well,
I'm not so sure that.
Nor am I, but at least it starts a conversation. And until we have a conversation, there's not much we can do.
Exactly. I mean, I keep doing the same thing. I mean, I went there as a high-level UN official, and I ended up by being called Mama Africa of radiation.
Yeah.
And to me,
and if anybody wants to go to Mongolia, let me know. It is fabulous. You really can still, for a very reasonable amount, get a couple of horses, get a camel and a cook and a guide, and you literally head off for 10, 15 days. You don't see anybody. It is pristine. It is out of this world. And I really, 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 really recommend Mongolia.
I would love to go. That's my dream, actually. I've got very good friends from Mongolia, and since I meet them, I absolutely want to go.
Yeah, it's fabulous. So
definitely take on this, because this was my next on the list. So thank you so much.
No,
yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So much easier.
Go out west to the Altai mountains and the eagle hunters there, and stay with them, and it's fabulous.
What about your body condition, your muscles and things?
I seem to be all right. Still seem to be running around, falling off things. Got a bit of gout, and I fell off a galloping camel about 2 years ago, which is not recommended. Basically, I thought instead of riding a horse, I thought I knew how to ride a camel, which I do, but this one was a wild one. Anyway, I was holding on to the camel, and it saw some wild camels about a mile away and started running towards them, and it started going faster and faster, and finally it sort of galloped, and the bits of wood I was holding on to trying to keep on broke, so the rope was no longer attached, so I had to sort of go off the camel, and it was interesting. So I'm still falling off camels and doing other funny silly things, but still quite fun. So in theory the body still works.
May I ask, please, what is in your plan for the coming time?
At the moment, I'm just having an absolute fabulous time promoting the idea of maps and taking these things to children, to students. It's now, the mapping is part of an MBA program at a university in America. We're using this for coaching. We're accrediting coaches to start using this with people for life coaching. No, lots and lots of very exciting things of how it's being used that just literally did not exist 6 months ago. So this has been a fantastic opportunity to talk to people about new and different ways of thinking and trusting themselves.
So no more word discovering places.
I'll go and discover some more places, but it won't be because I'm taking people there. It'll be because I want to go there. I mean, I'll certainly take some people, I hope, to Africa. I mean, there's a fabulous place I know, game park, right in front of Kilimanjaro, which is quite phenomenal.
Beautiful, beautiful, that one.
Yeah, not Amboseli, just next to Amboseli. It's called Kimana Sanctuary, yeah. More elephants than flies. It's a fantastic part of the world. So yeah, I'll be going off on the adventures, but at the moment, speaking to all of you is a fantastic privilege and an adventure.
Thank you.
So, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, hi.
Nadia, thank you.
One more thing, Nadia. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Okay. So Julissa will be asking the last question. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Julissa. I'm from Panama, Anthony. I would like to know if you're ever been hitchhiking in America, because I always thought to myself that would be like really different and difficult compared to other continents. And also, I'm curious, how many languages do you speak? One more thing, it's very inspiring that you said that, because I just recently started hitchhiking, and I decided to climb a different mountain here in Panama every month.
Yep.
So definitely is very liberating. And the fact that you need to push yourself and trust people is amazing. Every time I hitchhike, I invite people from internations to do that with me. I promise we get lost. We always do for some reason, even though if I know where we're going, and it's and everybody just loved it. So I definitely I'm happy to know that I'm kind of in the right track with that. Thank you so much.
Not at all, thank you. No, I mean, it's a long time. The last time I went hitchhiking was in America. So I went back and hitched the same road where I had "not hungry," because that was almost 50 years ago. I had the sign saying "not hungry," hitching that road. And it's still the people who ate the hitchhikers, you can still find it on the newspapers about, you know, I mean, the things about it. But I went back there, I hitchhiked. It took me a little bit longer, but people still picked me up. But, you know, when they see a 50-year-old, it's quite different to that. But no, I hitched all over the States. I actually hitchhiked all the way from Oaxaca in Mexico, all the way down to Panama City. So I hitchhiked through Costa Rica and all of those, but that's going back 50 years. So
Anthony,
yeah.
Just a question, please. I'm just interested to know about the trip you made for 10 or 15 days alone. Was you just by yourself, or you also had other companies? And was it like a desert or a jungle? And how did you manage to eat and those? And
which
things
one?
like
Across New Guinea?
Pardon?
Which one?
Yeah, you mentioned now that you made a trip in Mongolia. It was like for 10, 15 days.
No. You basically you have people carrying your food. You have a cook. You have everything. It is beautifully organized.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, I get it.
Oh, no,
Awesome.
no, it is fantastic. You have a cook. You have a guide. You have a camel handler.
Yes.
And you have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of you.
All right, awesome. I thought it you was like alone by yourself inside of a jungle or a desert or something like that.
No. I don't do well. I don't do well by myself. I need to have people to chat to and talk about things and carry
That's
the wine and enjoy it. For me, it's just simply around enjoying life and fulfilling it, not to be the first or anything.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Julissa, good luck on your trips up Panama. Fantastic. Hope to see you when I'm there next. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'd like to say a big thank you to Anthony. Everyone really enjoyed this talk, and I don't know if you're reading the chat. Everyone was saying thank you and how much they enjoyed this presentation. And it's about 5 minutes, 5 minutes to the hour. So we're going to be wrapping up. Would anyone like to just thank Anthony before we end the session?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. I've just seen on one of the messages saying that my email for some reason isn't receiving emails. If people want to get in contact, can they get in contact with you and then you can refer it to me, please?
Yes, of course. Yes, anyone. I'm happy. You can always contact me. Everyone in the audience, I hope, and I will put you in touch with Anthony. That will be a pleasure. So any issues, you can contact me and I can put you together. But Anthony, if I can't give them your email, what would I be giving them?
Well, it's the same one. It normally works. I'll just check it immediately now. But
okay, no worries, no worries.
Yeah, I will just.
Yeah, they'll be in touch soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Anthony, for your time and all the lovely pictures and wonderful stories. Very inspiring. We hope to follow in your footsteps.
Well, thank you, and I hope we'll do some mapping soon. So look forward to seeing you all again.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Cheers.
We'd love to have you back in November if you have any free time.
Okay. Thank you. Absolutely. Cheers. Thank
you. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Really, really lovely talking to you. Thank you.